Hi everyone, we are Team No Entiendo, and our capstone project is Eloquent, a education application for English language learners. And I'm Daniel.
I'm Amanda.
And I'm Angel.
And we are working with Dr. Brianna Ronan. She is in the education department working with students who are getting their teacher credentials, looking to go out into the world of education. And I think we all can say that one of the interesting parts about this is that steering away from not only just engineering, we're learning a lot about the education process and how, what we learn in elementary school and the techniques that we use move forward into our entire educational career. And so that's sort of the meta focus of what we're doing, but we're going to get into a lot of the specifics during our presentation today.
Okay, so Elloquent at a Glance, it's an iOS application that provides a unique learning experience for educators to use as a supplemental tool in the classroom for English language learners. English language learners are those that English is not their first language. Why teachers want to use it is because it's an easy and changing, adaptive way for them to alter their curriculum to a tool rather than vice versa. The evolution of this project is that it's been passed down to senior project groups for many years, and all contributing to what we have now with the existing game and its database. And the overall objective for Dr. Ronan is just to get the game out there, test it with students, get some feedback, and then further implement those changes.
So when a student logs in on the Elloquent app, as of right now, there's only one game, but we're trying to enhance that game. So currently, when you log in as a student, you're shown books that the teacher uploads. And when you select a book, it has a specific vocabulary list that the teacher also specifies. And so the game that is currently implemented is you're shown a word from that vocabulary list, and you try and draw it. It's kind of like Pictionary. So you draw the word to the best of your ability, and then you submit it. And then after you submit it, then you receive 3 drawings from your peers, and you try and guess the word that those pictures represent. Yeah, so as you can see, like elementary school students aren't the best drawers. So one of our main goals is to be able to implement like GIFs or like what's the word? like relative words that also represent that word. So like apple would be like red, or fruit or something. So so it's more easy for students to actually understand the word rather than just guess randomly what the picture could be. So yeah.
Cool. And so as important as the student aspect is to this game, technically it seems like just a Swift application that you can just kind of run through it. But the important part is that it kind of operates like those math books that we all had in elementary school, where it was like you had one version, but your teacher's was like 3 inches wider and had like all the answers and like how to teach people and like the answers to all the questions. That's kind of how we visualize the teacher perspective for this game. And so if you can kind of see that, we'll show you in a little bit. But the teachers have a verification methods on each student's inputs to the database that holds all the entries for a certain book's curriculum, if you will. So basically, if Johnny wrote an apple, you'll see that how good the apple is, or if they're totally off, whatever. But kind of what we're going for is to provide metrics for all these students. And so making sure that we're able to see like what words or concepts are consistently missed, or if there's anything that's sort of out of the ordinary with these students. Because again, we're working with English language learners who are typically behind in their English development. So in 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade, that's typically an indicator that you can't tell from typical like spelling tests or whatever, because we can kind of botch those, but it won't actually develop their skills. And so what we want to do for the teachers' availability is kind of curate this database so that they're able to input curriculum that's catered towards each student. And so where that gets unique is that we want to create sort of like communities within this, so the teacher can add their class to their community or whatever. And so their class is a certain set of words. That gets bigger when they're part of the school. That gets bigger when they're part of the entire application. So although we're like really small right now, we have to consider the universal application of a lot of students who read Rainbow Fish, who have great drawings. We want to be able to pull from those as well, so that you might not just see your peers' interpretation of the words, but you can see other people's too. And so the idea is to expand horizontally right now instead of the depth. And so making sure that we have a fundamental understanding of what we're trying to get at here. Yeah.
Going off this is also to make sure that the submissions are appropriate for classrooms. Again, like you said, if it gets bigger and bigger, you want to be able to make sure that those submissions are age appropriate, etc. The customer would be educators of elementary level students again. Dr. Ronan highlighted the fact that with this ever-growing digital age, we kind of want to use that to our advantage, especially since computers are more present in classrooms. And also nowadays as well, kids are more attracted to iPads and digital devices rather than paper and pen. In addition, this application comes with a web interface for the teacher side, so that helps them save time making new curriculum if they can just add a book with a click of a button, alter the words that they want to focus on, and do that each year instead of using materials, costs, etc. So that's our main focus. And again, in comparison to flashcards for students, it's an engaging and interactive way for little kids to learn the language as well as interact with their peers, parents, and teachers.
So Dr. Ronan had specified requirements for the Eloquent app. So the first one would be obviously a smooth boot up without crash. Crashing would be terrible. Also, obviously, you want to have a fun and engaging game. You don't want to bore your students. Like, you want to help them to really engage and learn English easily. Also, we want a functional app, so it's easy because they're all elementary level students. You want it to be simple and fun to use. Also, one of the main aspects of the app is to be able to add and remove students and books so the teacher can control the app and stuff. Also, as a overall goal for the future, we want to be able to implement more diverse games because the current game is just Pictionary. We want to add a few more if that's what the feedback is. And then also we want to have the teacher be able to track the progress of the students so you can see like the commonly missed words, things like that.
And again, this is very elementary on the front facing, but kind of why we're here, not anyone, is because there's engineering requirements, and that's why we're here. It's a capstone project. We got to think about these things. And so basically our parameters that encapsulate our engineering requirements are really based on the interactivity between the student and the database that exists and the teacher's ease of use when curating these libraries and lists. And so these are pretty ordinary. The ones we want to highlight are the encryption and security. We are all really bad at SQL, and so we are all trying to learn how to make sure that everything works correctly on that end. And so I found it interesting that based on your encryption and security on your SQL database, you can actually gain a lot of information, especially with students, because if you have students' names in there, people are able to pull from that stuff. The avalanche starts going, and so we want to make sure that we have that in there as well. Go to the next one. And then that kind of lies into our decisions chart. When we were handed this game, there's a lot of improvements to be made. It didn't work to start, and a lot of the requirements that the previous groups had in place weren't met. And so we've had to take a couple steps backwards in terms of this. And as much as we would like to just keep going, we had to make sure that we had our fundamentals straight. And so our decision tree or decision chart is really fundamental, but we kind of had two design options. And so I'll start with design option 2 because that's kind of where we started. The interactivity of the game was peer-to-peer immediate. And so what that means is that if you had two students with iPads or, in classrooms today, they have Chromebooks, they would just pass words and drawings back to each other. And, that kind of goes along with it. We kind of weighed that option as lower because the multiplayer aspect of the game is kind of tough to introduce to a classroom. We want students to be able to play this at any time, and we want to make sure that the teacher has the ability to monitor what's happening between those students and what they're seeing. So our design option 1 is kind of what we talked about thus far. is almost like a personal, personal Quizlet, but for the classroom that kind of feels like a new way to deliver educational tools. And we want to spice that up to make sure it's the coolest thing on the block.
So the main goal for our time in Capstone is to get our app tested. That's the main thing that Dr. Ronan has stressed for us. So our main goal is to test iteratively. First we need to obviously fix the app with all of its bugs and make it so that it's functional. And our next step is to get feedback from Dr. Ronan and implement the changes that she finds necessary by the end of our holiday break. So by the time next quarter starts, we can actually start testing with real students.
Once we get the feedback from that test session, we'll be able to add new features, implement changes, etc. Find out if they even like the game or if we should just try a new game. And then after that, with another new version of the game, we want to do another test experiment, but this time with a focus group with teaching credential candidates that can, again, analyze the new prototype and see if it helps in their situation. And our final milestone is to arrive at a working original game that suits Eloquent and Dr. Ronan's objective and purpose of helping students learn the English language in a fun and engaging way.
Cool. Thank you for listening. We would like to field any questions you might have.
So is this implemented as like there's a centralized server and then the teachers log in and students all log into it, or is it like the teachers kind of hosting all the content? Like what sort of implementations is the backend?
So the teacher hosts all the content. They are implementing into a database that's owned by them, so their school will have a private server that they could log into. That's what's not implemented and what our task is to figure out how we can get teachers to do that. But yeah, the teacher is the host for all of it and gives access to the students based on their student input credentials, and they only see what their teacher wants to see based off of the community that they're in. So if they're not in a certain class, they won't see that class's curriculum. Yeah, kind of like how if you did AR as a kid, you would only have access to like certain books. That's kind of the way we want to view it, is that you have a little library that's unique to you. Accelerated reading. You would have like a percentage goal. You'd have to read a certain amount of books and take little tests and stuff, that type of stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so I sort of missed this part, but are you getting rid of the original game and making a new one?
No, as of right now, we are trying to work with what we have. They do have a developed game, but again, there's a lot of bugs, and even though they presented the multiplayer aspect, it doesn't work at all. It's kind of just very staged. It took a lot of time, and it's continuing to take a lot of time because it's one thing to start from scratch and know where everything is, but it's another thing to take a whole project and look through each file and see what they're actually trying to do. So we kind of want to implement our changes with theirs and kind of just working on merging everything and also getting a sense of the database and how it interacts, etc. So there is a game, and you can technically play with it, but it's not very helpful, and it doesn't satisfy the objective.
Yeah, so in our demo, you'll see that there's a fixed game that we met our milestone, but there's also like an alpha part 2 of what we want to see implemented in the game, and that's on its way.
Another question? Okay, we're going to move on to the demo.